water gives life to everything, but what happens when there's too much in some places and none in others? Today, you'll learn English while discovering our world's water crisis and real solutions.
Chapter 1. Problems with water. Some people say that there will be big problems in the future. Countries will fight about water. Water. We drink it. We cook with it. We wash with it. We can't live without it. It gives life to everything. To people, animals, and plants. It is everywhere. In the seas, in the rivers, in the air, and in our food. Most of us don't think about it very much. Water is there for us, in our kitchens and in our bathrooms, every day. But it is not there for everybody, and our world is changing fast. We have to think very carefully about water and about our use of it. The world's weather. So, what is happening? Cars, planes, factories, and city life are making the world warmer every year. The air is warmer. Our seas are warmer. This is causing changes to the weather round the world. Some cold countries are getting warmer. Some hot countries are getting hotter. Rainfall is changing everywhere. Hurricanes and floods. In many countries, the warm air brings more rain and causes floods every year. Warmer air above warmer seas takes more water up into the air. This can cause hurricanes and typhoons. They begin over the seas and move quickly. When they get to land, they can be very big. Strong winds and heavy rainfall hit cities. They often cause big waves at sea too. When these waves hit the land, there are bad floods. People die. In August 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in the United States and flooded 80% of the city. In some places, the water was 6 meters high. More than 1,800 people died. Every year, more of Bangladesh is underwater in the summer. In 1988, more than 3,000 people died in big floods, and 3 million people lost their homes. In 1991, nearly 140,000 people died when 4.5-meter waves hit the land. Some places are now underwater all the time, and a lot of people die from diseases. This floodwater is dirty, of course, and it goes into the groundwater. There is water everywhere, but the Bangladeshis can't drink it. Not enough rain. In other countries, the problem is not too much rain, but not enough. There isn't as much rain as before, and there are long droughts. Fires start easily because trees are very dry. The fires quickly get bigger and more dangerous. We can see these changes now. Australia has a drought nearly every year. The big rivers in the southwest are often dry. Dangerous fires start every summer near the cities of Sydney and Melbourne in the southeast, and the air in the cities is black with smoke. In the south of France and Spain, too, there are droughts most summers, and there are often big fires. Problems of ice and snow. At the same time, the ice in the north and south of the world is melting, so seas everywhere are slowly getting higher. The ice is melting fast. In 1980, Arctic ice was about 5 meters thick. Now, it is only about 3 meters in some places. The people of the Arctic countries are losing their food and their homes. In many places, the ice is too dangerous. They can't walk on it. Animals and birds are also losing their food. Many of them are dying. In the mountains of the world, it is the same story. High mountains have snow and ice on them all year. The ice moves slowly down the mountains and melts into rivers. But the ice is melting higher up the mountains because the earth is getting slowly warmer. In the mountains of Switzerland, France, and Italy, there is usually snow in December for winter sports. But the snow is arriving later every year. It only stays on the highest mountains now. Higher seas. In 2000, the world's seas were about 30 centimeters higher than in 1900. Some people say that in 100 years from now, the seas will be a meter higher. The ice in the Arctic and Antarctic is melting faster every year. Some people think that without the ice on Greenland, the seas will one day be 7 meters higher. How will that change our world? Countries will get smaller. When the sea is a meter higher, cities near the sea will be underwater. Venice and most of London, Shanghai, and New York will go. Much of the Netherlands and the Maldives will go too. About 80% of the land in the Maldives is only a meter above the sea. Bangladesh will lose 15% of its land, and 13 million people will have to move. In Japan, 2,340 square kilometers of land will be underwater, and 4 million people will lose their homes. Weather and food. Weather changes cause problems for farmers. We need food, and our food comes from farms. Plants and animals on those farms need water, of course, a lot of water. When there is a drought, plants and animals die. Then people have no food. When there are floods, they can also kill plants and animals. Again, people have no food, and they can't drink the dirty groundwater. Our future. When floods and droughts happen only from time to time, people can usually live to the next year. They can get help from other richer countries. But when there are floods every year, there is no answer. People have to move or die. Some people say that there will be big problems in the future. Countries will fight about water. We know that the world is getting warmer. We know that our weather is changing. We have to do something before it is too late. Dirty water. But the weather isn't the cause of all problems with clean water. Many people in the world don't have water in their homes. They have to walk for hours to the nearest well or river, and this water isn't always clean. About 80% of all the world's diseases come from dirty water. 10 million people die each year from these diseases. Every day, there are about 220,000 more people in the world, and they all need clean water. But about 600 million people don't have enough water. For these people, water really is life. In 100 years, our children's children will, perhaps, live in a very different world. Chapter 2. A World of Water. Today, about 10% of the world's people don't have enough water. In 2025, some people say it will be 35%. Look at our Earth, the third world from the sun. It is a beautiful blue, with white in the north and the south. Here and there are browns and greens. But most of it is blue, because about 3/4 of it is water. Great seas of water. The Pacific has more than half of the world's water in it. Water is perhaps a better name for our world than Earth. The large white places are ice. The Arctic in the north and the Antarctic in the south. When you stand on the ice in the Antarctic, in some places there are 4 kilometers of ice below your feet. 90% of the world's ice is in the Antarctic. In the Arctic, it is different. The ice is a great thin, flat plate, and it floats on the sea. But Greenland is a large country in the Arctic, and the ice on it is 2 kilometers thick. There is also ice on high mountains everywhere. This ice is fresh water, but the world's seas are salty. This is important because we, the people on Earth, can't live without fresh water. We can't drink water from the seas. Where is the fresh water? So what is the problem? There is a lot of water on the Earth. There are rivers. There are big lakes. There is rain. But think about it. Let's put the world's water into 100 very big glasses. 97 of those glasses have salt water from the seas in them. That leaves us only 3 glasses of fresh water. But 2 of these 3 glasses are the ice in the north and the south. And that leaves only 1 glass. More than half of the water in that glass is somewhere under the ground, and a lot of the other water is too dirty. We can drink only about 0.05% of the Earth's water. More people, more problems. This doesn't change. There is no new water. But every year, there are about 80 million more people on our Earth, and they all need clean, fresh water. Today, about 10% of the world's people don't have enough water. In 2025, some people say it will be 35%. The biggest problems now are in Africa and the Middle East. But India, Pakistan, and China have very large numbers of people, and these countries are trying to make plans for the future. We don't need water only for people in their homes, of course. Farms and factories use a lot of water, more than homes. But people need food and work. The use of water in the world goes up each year by about 3%. But the number of people in the world goes up by between 1% and 2%. Some countries are using 4 to 8% more water every year. This will have to stop. Pollution is another big problem. Cities, farms, and factories are all polluting the fresh water in rivers and lakes, so people can't drink it. The beginnings of life. But why do we have to have water? All life on this earth came out of the seas. Life began in the water. First, there were very small plants and animals. Then, there were plants on the land. About 300 million years later, the first small animals came out of the sea. They used the plants for food. In time, there were more and more animals on the land, and they got bigger and bigger. Today, all people, plants, and animals need water, and they carry it inside them. People are more than 60% water, and some plants are 95% water. We can't live without it. Trees, flowers, animals, birds, and people all die without water. We live the first 9 months of our lives in water, inside our mothers. When we are born, we come into the air. But we carry about 40 litres of water with us all the time, inside us. Without it, we die quite quickly. Every day, we lose about 2.5 litres. When the weather is hot, we lose more water and faster. And we have to put it back. Only about half of this water comes from drinking. The other half comes from our food. Water from food. There is a lot of water in food. When you eat a chicken, 3/4 of the meat is water. Many fruits and vegetables and eggs are nearly all water. When we cook our food in water, that gives us more. Doctors say that we can live for about 3 months without food. But we can only live for about a week without food and water. When we are working hard in hot, dry weather, we can die in hours. We die after we lose a quarter of the water inside us. But our water has to be fresh and clean before we can drink it. Salt water will make us very ill. Dirty water can give us diseases. We need about 2.5 litres of clean, fresh water every day. Chapter 3. Fresh water from rain. There is 30 times more water in groundwater than in the world's rivers and lakes. Everybody has to have clean water. So, where does it come from? It comes, of course, from rain. But there are always problems with rain. In some places, it doesn't rain for months. In other places, or in the same places, it suddenly rains for days. In countries across the center of Africa and in South Asia, heavy rain usually starts to fall in the middle of June. It rains every day for 2 or 3 months, and there are floods. But farmers can then use the land. In the other months of the year, there is not much rain. It is very hot and dry, and there is not enough water. In some places in North Africa and the west of Australia, it doesn't rain for years. For every person in Europe and the United States, 3,000 to 6,000 litres of rain falls every day. But it doesn't always fall in the right places. A lot of it falls in mountains, and most people don't live in the mountains. The rainwater runs into the ground or into rivers, and the rivers take it away to the sea. We also lose a lot of rain because it falls in the sea. Why does it rain? There is always water in the air. When you put wet clothes out in warm air, they get dry. After it rains on the roads, a lot of the water goes up into the air. You can see it. This happens because the sun is taking the water from the ground into the air. The air takes up water from the seas too, and this water is fresh, not salty. The salt stays in the sea. Warm air can carry more water than cold air. When the air gets colder, it starts to lose the water. Then we see clouds. The air moves in the wind. Then, when warm air meets high ground, it goes higher. The warm air gets colder, and the water in the air makes clouds. The clouds get colder and darker, and the water gets heavier. Then it starts to rain. When the air is very cold, it snows. Rain or snow falls to the ground, and a lot of it runs into rivers. The rivers run into the sea. Then it all starts again. Water in the air. It doesn't have to rain. When wet air meets something cold, water falls on it. Look at your car in the early morning, or the trees in your garden. After a cold night, everything is wet with fresh water from the air. This is clean water. In countries without much rain, they often drink this water. In Tunisia, the weather is very dry. But in the early mornings, the ground is often wet. In some places, people can plant fruit trees, and the trees do well. Rainwater, clean or dirty. But is rain really clean water? Can we drink it? The answer is usually yes. But think about the rain after it falls. Water in rivers and lakes is fresh, but it isn't always clean. Dirty water runs into them from cities, factories, and farms. So we have to clean the water before we can drink it. Sometimes the air moves through smoke and dirty air above factories. Then the water in it gets dirty too. Later, when it falls, the rain can kill trees on the land and fish in lakes. Water from the ground. A lot of rain runs into the ground, not into rivers, and it stays there. When we find this groundwater, we can pump it up. Usually, it is clean and fresh. More than half of the water in European and North American homes and workplaces comes from groundwater. Sometimes the water is only 2 or 3 meters under the ground. Sometimes it is a long way down. In the hottest and driest countries of the world, groundwater is very important. In the countries of North Africa, there is very little rain, but under the ground, there are great lakes of fresh water. For hundreds of years, North Africa had rain, and the rain stayed under the ground. There were rivers, trees, and a lot of people. Today, the people of North Africa pump this water up and use it. Saudi Arabia and other dry countries also use groundwater. Drivers take it from the pumps to the small villages. Water from wells. There is 30 times more water in groundwater than in the world's rivers and lakes. People pump up groundwater from old and new wells. Every year in the United States, there are 500,000 new wells. But groundwater will not always be there. When it rains, some water goes back into the ground. But this happens slowly. Sometimes there is no water in the wells. The wells are dry. There are other problems too. Near the sea, salt water can run into the groundwater. Then the wells are salty. More and more people need more and more water. One day, there will perhaps be no groundwater in some countries, or it will be too dirty for them. Chapter 4. Lessons from the Past. When there were more people on Earth, some moved away from the rivers. They learned about groundwater. For thousands of years, people made their homes next to rivers. They had to have fresh water for people, plants, and animals. When rain didn't fall, a river always gave them water. The first people with towns and farms lived in Mesopotamia, now Iraq, between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. The first people with towns and farms lived in Mesopotamia, now Iraq, between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. The people of Egypt lived next to the river Nile, because the river water made farming easy. Every year, after the rains in the mountains of Africa, the Nile flooded the land next to the river and made it good for farming. Farmers cut small waterways from the river across their land. These carried water to the plants. Sometimes farmers made pumps. These pumped water out of the river and on to the farmland. They were small pumps, and a man could work them. Later, there were bigger pumps, and an animal worked them. When there were more people on Earth, some moved away from the rivers. They learned about groundwater. They made wells and took fresh water from them for their animals and plants. In many countries, people take their water from these same old wells today. They have to carry it to their homes on their heads or on the backs of animals. Often, they have to carry it for kilometers. The first waterways. In about 2500 BC, the people in Persia, now Iran, needed water for their farms. There was not much rain there. There were no rivers near their homes and farms, and the groundwater and the wells were a long way away, near the mountains. So they moved the water from the mountains to their villages. First, they went to the high ground and studied it carefully. They looked for wet ground or green plants, for a possible place for a well. When they found water, they made more wells, dry wells, every 30 to 50 meters away from the first well. They called the first well the mother well. Then they made a way through the ground between the bottoms of the other wells. The wells got shorter and shorter, and in the end they came out above the ground. Then the Persians carefully broke through to the bottom of the mother well. This was dangerous, because the mother well had water in it. But when they broke through, the water ran from well to well and out onto the land below. Then the Persians built a waterway across the land and carried the water to their villages and farms. Some of these waterways were 100 kilometers long. These people didn't stay in Persia. They took their clever ideas to Arabia and built waterways there too. 3,000 years later, a lot of these waterways are working in Iran and Arabian countries. In Iran, they call them canals. There are thousands of kilometers of them there, and 3/4 of Iran's fresh water comes from them. In Arabia, they call them fallages. In Oman, there are about 4,000 of these fallages. They are 2,500 years old and working today. Some of them run for 10 kilometers under the ground from the mother well. Then the clean fresh water from the mountains runs for 20 or 30 kilometers through farms and villages. 500 years later, The Romans also used waterways, but in a bigger and better way. They brought fresh water from the Apennine Mountains to their cities. At one time, there were 9 waterways into the city of Rome. One of them, the Aqua Claudia, was 72 kilometers long, and for 15 kilometers it went over great bridges. The Romans took these ideas from Italy into other European countries. There are great Roman waterways today in France and Spain. The Pont du Gard brought water more than 50 kilometers to the city of Nîmes in France. It is the highest Roman waterway in Europe. It has 3 bridges and is 49 meters high. All cities have to have fresh water, and the water has to come from somewhere. Usually, it comes from rivers, lakes, and groundwater. It runs into the cities through big waterways under the ground. Today, there are great waterways in nearly every country in the world. They carry water, usually under the ground, to the people in every town and city. Chapter 5. Dams, Ice, and Other Answers. Can ships pull a large iceberg from the ice shelves in Antarctica to Saudi Arabia? How big will it be when it gets there? We can't make more water. We can, perhaps, find new groundwater. We can also stop polluting our fresh water and use it more carefully. But are there other answers to the problem of fresh water? Dams. There is a lot of fresh water in rivers and lakes. In the end, this water runs into the sea, and we lose it. But we can stop it going into the sea. The best way is a dam across a river. Behind the dam, there is a big lake of fresh water. People are building more and more dams every year, and the new lakes give us more fresh water. The world's ice. The use of ice is another possible answer. Our Earth is always changing. It takes thousands of years, but very slowly it gets colder or warmer. When it gets very cold, we call this an ice age. There is thick ice over a lot of the Earth, not only in the Arctic and Antarctic. This ice is fresh water, from rain and snow. There is no salt in it. Between the ice ages, the Earth is very warm. There is very little ice, and there are trees and green plants in the Arctic. We are living today about 10,000 years after the last small ice age. At that time, there was ice over most of the north of Europe. Now the weather is slowly getting warmer, and the ice on the Earth is melting. Do you remember our 100 glasses of water? Only 3 glasses had fresh water in them. The other glasses had salt water from the seas. And in 2 of the 3 glasses of fresh water was the ice in the north and south of the Earth. This ice is clean, fresh water. In the north and south. Usually, when things get colder, they get smaller. But when water changes to ice, it gets a little bigger. So ice floats on water. In the Arctic today, a large plate of ice floats on the sea. It gets bigger in winter and smaller in summer. But in its thickest places, it is only about 5 meters thick. There is a lot more ice on Greenland, a large country in the Arctic. But most of the ice on the Earth is in the south, in the Antarctic. Antarctica is land, not a sea. It is the coldest land on Earth. It has 90% of the world's ice and 70% of the world's fresh water. It is as big as the United States, and it gets bigger in the winter, with shelves of ice over the sea round it. In the summer, it gets smaller, when a lot of the new ice melts. There are mountains in Antarctica, and many are more than 2,000 meters high. The ice on them is 2 or 3 kilometers thick, and it is all fresh water. It is very old and very clean. Icebergs. In the spring and summer, when the ice begins to melt, it moves slowly down from the mountains. It breaks, and great thick mountains of ice float away. These icebergs can sometimes be dangerous for ships. Some icebergs are really big. One was 335 kilometers long and 97 kilometers wide, bigger than Belgium. A lot of the ice in the south of the Earth, about a third of it, is in the great ice shelves round Antarctica. These shelves also break into icebergs. Some icebergs are green or blue. But when there is a little air in the ice, they are white. In the north, many icebergs come from Greenland. They float down into the Atlantic in the summer months. When you see an iceberg in the sea, you only see its top. Nearly all of it is below the water. In April 1912, the Titanic, a great new ship with 2,228 people on it, was on its way to the United States from Britain. It was the biggest ship in the world at that time. In the middle of the night, it hit a big iceberg, and in 3 hours, it was at the bottom of the sea. More than 1,500 people died. Today, when ships go between Europe and the United States in the summer months, they move to the south, away from the Arctic. The journey is longer, but they don't meet icebergs. The icebergs slowly melt in the sea, but they don't stay in one place. The winds and the seas move them, sometimes 25 kilometers in a day. The icebergs can move across the seas for many years and can go thousands of kilometers. They slowly get smaller and smaller, of course. But one iceberg from the south arrived near Rio de Janeiro, a journey of 5,500 kilometers. And an iceberg from the north made a journey of 4,000 kilometers to Bermuda. Every year, thousands of icebergs leave the ice shelves in the Arctic and the Antarctic and float away across the seas. In every iceberg are thousands of liters of fresh, clean water. Fresh water from icebergs. In July 1977, 30 men met in Paris. They wanted to discuss possible answers to water problems. Can ships pull a large iceberg from the ice shelves in Antarctica to Saudi Arabia? How big will it be when it gets there? Can people then use it for fresh water? This use of icebergs was not a new idea. The people of Peru did it before 1900. But the journey to Saudi Arabia is longer. They tried it. They pulled some icebergs north to Saudi Arabia. It was difficult, slow, and very expensive. After that, they stopped trying. The journey was too long and cost too much money. But today, more than 30 years later, we really need more fresh water. In Australia, there are more and more droughts. People there are discussing this question again. The icebergs of Antarctica are quite near South Australia. Perhaps the journey will not be too difficult or expensive now. Rain from clouds. What other answers are there to the problem of fresh water? In some countries, when there is a bad drought, they try to make rain. They fly aeroplanes with chemicals above clouds. When the chemicals fall into the clouds, they sometimes make rain. But first, you need clouds, and often there are no clouds in the sky. Also, it is expensive and does not always work. Fresh water from the sea. You can, of course, take the salt out of sea water. This is not a new idea. It is more than 50 years old. It needs a large factory. Salt water from the sea goes in and fresh water comes out. The salt goes back into the sea. There are about 7,500 of these factories in the world today, and people are building more in many countries. There are a lot of them in North African countries, but 60% are in the Middle East, a quarter of them in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has the biggest factory. It can make 580 million litres of fresh water every day. 70% of the country's fresh water comes from these factories. Australia has plans for a big new factory too. It will make 500 million litres of fresh water a day. It is expensive, but in some countries it is a good answer to the problem. The best answer for all of us is, of course, use your fresh water carefully. Chapter 6. What can we do? We have to think about those people in the world without clean water, and about the future for our children's children. We have to use our fresh water more carefully, all of us. But who uses most of the water? Nearly 3/4 of the people in the world have water only from rivers and wells. Many people in Africa and Asia have only 10 litres of water each day. 5,000 children die every day in the world because their water carries diseases. In the United Kingdom, each person drinks and cooks with about 3 litres of water, but they also use 60 litres or more for baths and clean clothes. 50 litres go down the toilet every day. Britons wash their cars and water their gardens, all with good clean water. Each person uses more than 140 litres every day. Water use is about the same in other European countries. Americans use more. Each man and woman in the United States uses about 200 litres every day, half of it in the bathroom. Rich people in California use more. A lot of them swim in fresh water in their gardens. But in the United States, there are also about 4 million people without clean water in their homes. In Australia, most people live in the big cities near the sea. They use 200 litres of water every day too. But there are droughts nearly every year. The farms have no water, and the problem is getting worse. The problem of farms. We use more water on farms and in factories than in our homes. A lot more. Every day, there are about 220,000 more people on Earth, and they all need water. But they also need food, and this food comes from farms, from plants and from animals, for meat and milk. Without water, these plants and animals will die. Usually, most of this water comes from rain. But rainfall can, of course, be a big problem. Too much rain causes floods. Then plants and sometimes animals die. In a drought, the ground gets very dry. Then, too, plants and animals sometimes die. Some countries have a lot of rain, but they use only about 10% of it. The other 90% goes back into the ground, the air, or the sea. Other countries have very little rain, and farming is only possible near rivers. So, all over the world, when the weather is dry, farmers take water from rivers and lakes. They water their fruit and vegetables, and also give it to their animals. In most countries, they also pump up a lot of groundwater and put it on their land. In this way, the plants stay green, and the people in the cities get their food. But what happens then to the rivers and the groundwater? Some rivers are dry. In some places, wells are dry too. One day, perhaps, there will be no groundwater in some countries. Dry rivers and lakes. In Asia, between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, there are two great rivers, the Amu Darya and the Sir Darya. In 1918, the Russians started to take water from them and make farmland. The farms were very big, and a lot of food came from them. But the two rivers ran into the Aral Sea, a great lake. 35 million people lived round the lake. 10,000 people caught fish in it. 3% of the fish in Russian shops came from the Aral Sea. 40 years later, the Aral Sea was nearly dry. Most of the water from the rivers didn't arrive there. The Aral Sea is now a very small lake, and the boats sit on dry land. When the Aral Sea dried, people there had no work. Their boats were many kilometers from the water. The water and the land were also very salty, and many people got ill. Today, there is a new dam across one end of the Aral Sea. The lake is getting bigger, and there are fish in it again. But it is smaller than it was. There are problems with river water everywhere. The Yellow River is more than 4,800 kilometers long, and it runs across China. A lot of farmers take water from it. Cities and factories also take water from it. In 1972, the river didn't arrive at the sea. It was dry. In California, in the United States, 25 million people take water from the Great Colorado River for their cities, factories, and farms. Now, very little water arrives in Mexico. The river is nearly dry. The problem of factories. Factories also cause problems. People need food and water, but they also need houses, clothes, cars, computers, paper, and televisions. Factories make these, and factories use a lot of fresh water. They use 450,000 litres of water for a family car, and 400 litres for 1 kilo of paper. About 22% of the world's fresh water goes into factories. In the richer countries, it is more than half. A lot of the water runs out of the factories again into rivers and the sea. Often this water is then dangerously dirty. It can pollute river and seawater and kill the fish in hours. Factories can also pollute the air with their smoke. Rain from this dirty air is not clean. In many countries, factories have to clean their smoke before it goes into the air. But not in all countries, and not all factories. Today, in most countries, factories also have to be careful with their water. They have to clean it before it goes into the ground or into a river. But mistakes and accidents happen all the time. We have to do better. Pollution everywhere. But in most countries, the biggest problem with pollution is from farms. The farmers put a lot of chemicals on the land. These chemicals make the plants bigger and stronger, and people have more food. But the chemicals go down into the groundwater. The rain also washes the chemicals into the rivers. They pollute the water and kill the fish. There are chemicals from farmland in 90% of the rivers in Europe. So, that is one of the big problems. We need more water every year for our cities, our farms, and our factories. But those cities, farms, and factories all make the water too dirty for our use. Clean water for all. Everybody needs water. But some people have too much, and most people have too little. We can make new lakes behind dams. We can pump up groundwater and move it to our cities. We can take water from rivers and lakes for our farms. We can also get water from ice and seawater. It is difficult and expensive, but it is possible. But people in rich countries have to think hard about their use of water. They have to stop polluting rivers, groundwater, and the seas. They have to use their clean water more carefully. And they have to help people without clean water in other countries. What can we do? How can we help? We can think about our use of water every day. We need to think when we cook. We need to think when we wash. We have to think about those people in the world without clean water, and about the future for our children's children. World plans for the future. Every year, the 22nd of March is World Water Day. This began in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro at a big meeting of the United Nations. That year, people from every country in the world met and discussed plans for the future. How could we make the world a better place? Every year, on the 22nd of March, each country makes new plans for cleaner water for more of their people. They want to help the 1 billion people in the world without clean water before it is too late.
Where you live, is water getting cheaper, more expensive, or harder to find? Do you see more floods or more droughts? Share your city, country, and your experience below. If this helped your English, like and subscribe for new stories each week.